Often called the waterway of the century, the Panama Canal serves as one of the most effective and beneficial man-made examples of architecture in history. The triumphant nature of this structure came at a tragically high price due to the tremendous death toll associated with its construction.
Panama at this time was still not country, but a little chunk of land. Since that land was there, an explorer named Vasco Nunes de Balboa wanted to see both oceans, Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. So to accomplish that goal, he took a team of people to both sides of the land. Later on in history, Panamanians were helped by the United States to break free from Colombia, and so they did and chose the land it is at today. Then, once Panama was a country, a French man named Ferdinand de Lesseps attempted the construction of the canal to give the people what they want.
The project of building the canal first started in 1881 by the French. They tried the project for a couple of years, eventually giving up because of financing and engineering problems, yellow fever and malaria, and multiple deaths. Afterwards, they stopped construction and lost hope that the project would ever be completed. Then, after a few years, they had hope once again when Theodore Roosevelt decided to continue the project in 1902. The people then continued the project, but the same thing happened. Less financial and engineering, and more deaths caused by yellow fever and malaria. They also found out the cause of the diseases were by mosquitoes and found a way to prevent a lot of the diseases and ended off with only 1 or 2 cases of malaria and yellow fever a year. Then in 1914, the Panama Canal was built. In August of 1914, the Panama Canal finally opened.
The canal was 33.5 meters long and 18.03 meters deep. The canal is located in the exact coordinates of 9.38743 north and negative 79.91863 west. The people who made the canal named the locks. The Gatun locks are for the Atlantic Ocean, and the Pedro Miguel and Miraflores locks are for the Pacific Ocean. The canal is also one of the most difficult engineered man-made waterways in the world. It is also the only canal in the world that connects both major oceans, Atlantic and Pacific. The main reason why they built the canal was because before the canal, to import from other countries, the boats had to go up around the Americas, and it took weeks and took tons of fuel. Now with the canal built, the normal passage time would be about 3 hours.
People wanted a waterway through Panama so that they could go in and out of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. They also wanted a way to get to places faster and trade with the USA. The Panama Canal is an artificial 51-mile waterway in Panama that connects the Atlantic with the Pacific Ocean. The canal cuts across the Isthmus of Panama and is used for world trade. There are 2 sets of locks in the canal. The canal locks are at each end to lift ships up to the Guten Lake. The Panama Canal is a waterway that benefited the world, but at the same time it affected lives because of all the thousands of people that died during the construction of the Panama Canal.
They wanted to originally build the canal in Nicaragua, but then they saw Panama and saw that it was a very narrow strip of land. Because of that and the fact that it was the only other country to connect both major oceans together, they decided to do it in Panama.
Back in the 1900s, when they were debating where to build a canal, there were 2 reasons why Panama was chosen. One reason was that the French had already started digging, and they had completed quite a bit of the work in digging the canal, and they had all the equipment there. So it was easy for the United States to buy the equipment and continue their digging there. Nicaragua has a lot of volcanoes, and they had a lot of earthquakes. And so before the decision was made where to go, either Panama or Nicaragua, the Congress realized that earthquakes would cause problems for the canal if it were built in Nicaragua. So they finally decided to go to Panama because it was closer to the United States. Even though it was a wider country, not as narrow as Panama, it had a lot of advantages because there was a big lake in the middle of Nicaragua where it wouldn't require additional digging. So they only had to dig from the lake to the ocean. and then the ships would cross the lake to the other ocean.
The image of Theodore Roosevelt is why he continued the project. His image was a long-term United States goal of a trans-Isthmian canal. He saw a way for the United States to gain money and save time and for the world in ship travel.
In the process of building the canal, many people died because of diseases and having heat stroke. So to try to keep the patients alive, they would have two nurses, one for swatting away the flies and one for treating the patient. They eventually decided to kill every mosquito, which they ended up doing, and later made it where there was only 1 or 2 malaria and yellow fever diseases a year. Sadly, by this time, they were already too late and thousands of men had already died of the mosquitoes. So we say that they could have saved thousands of lives if only they knew about the mosquitoes causing the diseases malaria and yellow fever.
Malaria is a contracted disease that can kill infected people by entering the blood cells and eventually going to the heart. However, malaria can be cured through modern medical advances.
Yellow fever is a disease that can kill many people by damaging the body's vital organs. The yellow fever disease is not curable, though you can get vaccinated for.
Over the years, people started making bigger ships. Eventually, the ships got so big that the canal was too small for the ships to go through. So instead of making a new canal, they had an expansion added to the canal.
Panama Canal is like 50 miles long. It takes from 16 to 24 hours to go through it. But it started by the U.S. supporting the Panamanians by showing them how to run the canal. So they won't have any mistakes or errors. So right now, yes, the Panamanians are running the canal fully.
The expansion made the canal 55 meters wide and 18.3 meters deep. With the new expansion, it made the canal 21.5 meters bigger than the original canal. Doing this let the bigger ships that were too big for the original canal get through the Panama Canal.
Over the many years that the Panama Canal has been on the planet, archaeologists have found or dug up thousands of artifacts. They found so many artifacts from beer bottles, to ballots, to patches, to many books, to reports and medical offers, to even the bones of the actual workers of the Panama Canal.
The canal impacted the world by helping Europe, Africa, and many other countries travel and trade with each other. By building the canal, the United States began to earn money for each ship that went through it. This continued to be a financial benefit for the U.S. for many years to come. It also allowed ships to go around the Americas, which previously cost more money and fuel, as well as time. Today, the canal takes less time to pass through, uses far less fuel, and is much cheaper to use.
The Panama Canal is a man-made waterway that affected and benefited thousands to millions of lives. It was started by the French in 1881 and was stopped, then continued on in 1902 by the Americans and later finished and set out for the public in 1914. After the project was done, the canal had a whopping total worker death of 2,000 to 3,000 deaths, and an estimate by diseases such as yellow fever and malaria, and conditions like heat stroke. Over a course of many years, people started making bigger ships that were too big for the canal. By this fact, they added an extension of 21.5 meters to the original canal, letting those bigger boats get through the canal. Since its first opening in 1914, 100 years later, archaeologists have discovered thousands of artifacts from the canal like books, patches, and jewelry. Making this canal triumphantly impacted the world for many years by saving time, money, and fuel for hundreds of countries.
So how do the ships get raised and lowered? The canal has a waterlock system that acts like an elevator. When ships enter the locks, they're raised by water from the lake. Each lock raises the ships until they're 85 feet above sea level. Then, they travel across the Guten Lake. The ship is then lowered by the locks to sea level.